Okay, on today's show, we are going to be discussing the condition endometriosis. This is a condition that affects many women all around the world, causing significant pain and side effects such as fertility. On the show with me today is an endometriosis mentor, Jane Frank. She's dialing in from New Zealand, and she's going to talk to me about how she helps women around the world manage the condition, recognize symptoms, and really just kind of be a listening ear and an advice guide to help them live with the condition. This is Shifting Views with Willis. Okay, Jane, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for dialing in from New Zealand. It's late at night there, I'm told.
It is past 10 o'clock, but it's all right. It's a Friday night.
I really appreciate coming on the show. The reason I wanted to talk about this today is over in the UK especially, I've seen a little bit of media footage and things going on talking about this condition, endometriosis. It seems to be getting a little bit of a voice over here and becoming more recognized. But it seems to me that it's not recognized enough. And a lot of women are dealing with this problem, which is, as I understand it, quite a horrible condition to have. And really, we kind of just need to be shouting about it more and trying to help people recognize this. And also not only for more women to recognize it and be able to get help for it, but also for the men. So the males in that family, fathers, husbands, brothers, whatever, to kind of try and support their family members. So that's really why I wanted to talk about it. But I just wonder if you could just give me a little bit of background from your side, just kind of what is endometriosis and why is this such a concern for women?
Yeah. So endometriosis, there is a lot of unknowns about it. And the main thing that's known at this stage is that it is cells similar to the lining of the uterus. It's not actually the lining of the uterus, but these cells that are similar are found outside of the uterus and they implant themselves throughout the pelvis, but it's now being found in so many other places, on organs, the lung, most commonly though, like throughout the pelvis, the bowel, the bladder, the ovaries. And yeah, it's just a horrific disease, unfortunately. And I think more people are talking about it now, which is a great thing. More people are being open about periods and period pain. And I think that's really helping people kind of starting to understand and talk about it more.
So what's got you into being a mentor? Why have you felt the need to kind of take up this fight, I guess, to try and help women around the world deal with this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was diagnosed 2020, so not long ago, 4 years ago. And I've had a wild ride of a journey, to say the least. I've had 4 surgeries within like a 3.5-year window. And with that, I have learned so much. If I knew what I knew now when I was like 17, 18, 19, I think my journey would have been completely different. There's just so much to it to try and live better with endometriosis, and just navigate, daily challenges that we face. I've just learned so much through the journey that I just feel like I've just got this bag of knowledge, and I just really want to help others that are struggling and, that are dealing with challenges, daily challenges, and life at home, life at work. And I just want to try and give all the information that I've learned that's really helped me to get to where I am now. And I just, if I can just kind of help people advocate for themselves, and just find the best way for them to navigate their journey. If I can help one person, I'd be so stoked. Yeah.
Do you remember how you had this condition? Do you remember, was it specific symptoms? Was there a journey?
Yes.
What was the story behind it?
So looking back now, I've had symptoms from the first time that I got my period, which was extremely painful periods, heavy bleeding, back pain, and also like irregular periods, which is also a really common symptom. I dealt with that all throughout my teens to the point where, like, when I was 14, I used to pass out, black out with pain. I'd be doubled over, I'd be cold sweats, everything. And, eventually I'd go to the doctor and say, I've got these symptoms. But at the time, looking back now, I was going with one symptom at a time. So I think that was hard for doctors to kind of realize, hey, there's a bigger picture of symptoms. When I'm kind of going, for one trip was a back pain issue, another trip was heavy periods, another trip was my periods not stopping. So many symptoms across the board. And I've definitely lived with it for a very long time. It kind of got to the point where in 2020, during that lockdown period, I had a really, really bad period. Pretty much nearly collapsing in my kitchen. Once everything got back up and running, we had our delays with COVID and everything. Went back to the doctor, ordered scans, and then that kind of started my progression to actually getting in and seeing a gynecologist. From that, at that consult, he was like, yeah, let's do the surgery and check. And instantly I was like, oh my God, what if I don't have it? So then you're starting to think, like, this is all in my head. I'm going crazy. Like, the symptoms aren't that bad. And you just talk yourself out of it. And it's amazing the power of the mind and what we go through. And I remember talking to my gynecologist and saying, like, I'm starting to feel better. I don't think I have this. Like, I'm wasting your time. I'm wasting my time and my money. I don't think I need to go through with this. And thank God I did, because I had extremely severe stage 4 deep infiltrating endometriosis, which means it had like grown into multiple layers of tissue throughout my body.
Yeah. I saw. I mean, it's interesting what you say about the self-doubt as well, because I wonder if a lot of, because there is a narrative, I guess, around, for females, periods they're not particularly pleasant for a lot of people. There's a bit of pain that comes with it, and it's just normal period pains and all of this kind of stuff. This kind of narrative. And I suppose when you first were having these symptoms back in your teens, maybe endometriosis wasn't as well recognized then as well. So
and I think also there's also that concept of a bit of body shame. We don't want to talk about it. Like, at the time when I was at high school, all my friends were having a great time, doing all the sports that they loved to do. And now, I've learned so much, especially with a psychologist who's helped me recognize when I was in pain, I was withdrawing, from my circle of friends, from school. That was the way that I coped and managed, and I couldn't understand, like, why is everyone just like having a great time hanging out on the weekends when I'm just feeling horrific? Like, are they not experiencing this? And I guess you self-doubt. What is my normal may not be someone else's normal, and unfortunately that was my mum. She had a horrific time with her periods. So when I kind of raised it with her, she was like, oh, you were just like me, type thing. And instead of thinking, oh shoot, like, this is something that needs to get checked out, you compare yourself to other people, but what's your normal may not be my normal. It is relative to each person.
Yeah, and so you act as a mentor now, so you're trying to help other women deal with this. What are some of the most common misconceptions, would you say, there is about endometriosis? And do you encounter kind of similar misconceptions with different people?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing to know is that there's so many symptoms that cross over with other things like PCOS. There's also another condition similar with endometriosis called I'm going to get this right. It's either adenomyosis, and other people pronounce it adenomyosis, which is really similar to endometriosis. So it's like its sister, I guess, where the lining of the uterus grows into the wall of the uterus. Yeah. And again, symptoms super similar, and can cause infertility as well. So I think with those, there's so many crossovers of symptoms that it's just so hard to know what's what.
I think there would be a lot of misconceptions, because going back to that earlier point about it, it's unless you're aware of this condition, like the average Joe probably isn't aware of a thing called endometriosis, so And particularly, I'm speaking from a man here. So if your girlfriend, your wife, your mum, whoever, if the female in your family is having problems, firstly, they're unlikely to speak to you about it unless you're particularly close, because it's a private thing, and there's an element of privacy, and as you said earlier on, even shame there almost to some extent. But if you do have that conversation, what is a guy supposed to say? I mean, if they don't know what this is, they've never heard of it, they say, well, maybe you should go see a doctor or something if it's that bad. It's that kind of normal conversation.
Absolutely.
So I just wonder, in terms of, I mean, from your own experience and from what you're seeing with clients, what are some of the really early symptoms that women should be aware of, and that might indicate that they have endometriosis? And also, as a second part to that, how do they advocate for themselves when trying to seek a diagnosis?
Yeah, so there are a lot of symptoms. Really common ones are the long periods, heavy bleeding, but at the same time, it could be irregular bleeding, it could be light periods. If all of those are kind of happening with back pain, fatigue, abdominal pain, they're kind of starting to, I guess, create the picture of these wider symptoms that are occurring. And like my advice that I give to the people that I'm talking to and mentoring is write your symptoms down. If you can list everything, and also try and highlight a pattern. Like if things are starting to happen around your cycle time, it's just going to help doctors see the bigger picture sooner. I don't know what stats are like in the UK, but I'm assuming they're really similar to New Zealand. Like we've had an increase in the delay of a diagnosis. The years have increased. I've just done a study here, and from 2022 to 2024, the time period of a diagnosis has increased from, I think it was like 8.7 years up to 9.7 years in a delay. So my goal is to try help educate these people to be like, these are your symptoms, this is what you need to look for, and hope that they can go to the doctor and get a diagnosis sooner. So ideally decrease that delay with, the delay of diagnosis. So super important. Yeah. Just list the symptoms as much as you can. If you see any patterns, highlight those patterns. And yeah, talk to the doctor in regards to that.
So you're essentially saying keep a diary, because we're looking for trends here. We're looking for things that are happening over a period of time. And I guess in terms of advocating for getting a diagnosis from a doctor, I guess this is your evidence in a way. You're kind of going in with as much information as you can to say to them, look, I've been tracking these things that are happening. Here's the list of these things. This has been happening over this period of time. I therefore feel that this could be something more significant. Can you investigate for whatever? And I suppose if more women are aware of this condition and know the name of this condition and know the symptoms that are related to it, then they can specifically ask for that. Could it be endometriosis?
100%. Absolutely. And I think with a lot of people now, and for some doctors, if they can't find the diagnosis, because with endometriosis, the only way to get a affirmative diagnosis is through surgery, which is super invasive. They can't cut open everyone to figure it out whether they've got it. Obviously, some of these symptoms can highlight suspicion for the doctors, but I think it is quite an intense condition to have to actually be officially diagnosed with. Sure. When doctors can't figure, the answers out, some people are diagnosing them with IBS, so irritable bowel syndrome, because again, the symptoms overlap. So I think if you've got your list of symptoms and your doctor's saying it's down to IBS, then at least you've created a picture that you can present to them and be like, but everything's cycle related, still question whether it's endometriosis, whether it's PCOS or, something else. There could be a million other things of what it could be.
Yeah, and I was thinking when you was listing some of the symptoms you'd experienced and some of the common symptoms that women will experience if they've got this, I was thinking when you were saying that, there's definitely going to be a crossover there with other conditions,
So many.
back pain and stomach issues and all of this stuff. And you
Yeah.
think, well, actually, that could be linked to lots of different things. And I suppose that's why it's important to keep this diary to try and connect the dots yourself a little bit.
So important.
And I suppose the other thing, I mean, the ideal would be that there needs to be more research in sort of being able to develop some form of test to kind of discover this, so that it's not as invasive to try and determine whether that's the problem or not. And I suppose that's why we need to raise more awareness about it.
Yeah, and there are tests. There's a lot of trials going on that I'm aware of. I think maybe France or Switzerland were trying a saliva test to see if that could pick up something, that can highlight, I think, either the proteins or enzymes, or I'm not 100% sure, but there is definitely trials. There was some talk of a blood test somewhere trialing. If they can happen, great, and I hope they happen in my lifetime to help people get diagnosed sooner. But it's just, I think, because there's so much unknown about the condition, trying to get a diagnosis is hard.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm thinking about, if people are living with this now, and you have your own personal journey with this, have you developed sort of strategies for being able to manage symptoms, being able to live with the physical and emotional impact of this condition? Can you suggest some basic strategies that women could be looking to use?
Yeah. So the physical and the emotional impacts are huge. I'm not going to lie. So physically, there's so many things that can help, whether it be physiotherapy, whether it be seeing a pelvic floor physiotherapist, whether it be acupuncture, an osteopath, a chiro. I think with endometriosis, one thing that I've learned with my journey is making sure you utilize a multidisciplinary team of all these, there's so many knowledgeable practitioners out there in the field, they're experts in what they do. It's utilizing them. So find what works for you. What may work for me may not work for someone else. But, try the massage, try the physio, all of those things. Any way for you to get relief, whether it's, long term, whether it's short term, if it can bring relief to help you function, daily, weekly, monthly, you've got to try, you've got to use it. And unfortunately, it is really hard when you're in so much severe pain, so much fatigue, to try and, seek that help yourself is really hard. Especially when you are stuck on the couch and you can't move. The last thing you want to do is try and talk to someone or, try and seek that help. But it is really, really important. The other thing, the mental side of things is, and the emotional is huge. So utilizing counseling services where you can, a psychologist if you can access them, super important to even, just incorporating a bit of mindfulness into your daily routine. And it's amazing how much pain can be, how much anxiety can relate with pain. Unfortunately, sure. I've learned all of this, I'm still going through it, like I still recognize when my pain levels are coming up, my anxiety increases, and I get really emotional as well. So sure. Working with all these professionals has been so beneficial. And it's expensive, unfortunately, but I think some countries, and even in like my region, I know there's funding for certain things. At the moment, there's funding in my area for scanning. So if you've got abnormal bleeding, you can access funding for scanning, which is amazing. So it's all, you do need to do a bit of research and figure out what's available, but utilize what you can get as much as you can. Yeah. Because it's expensive, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a real challenge, isn't it? And of course, I can only imagine it's utterly terrifying as well, especially if it's pre-diagnosis. So this, you've got these horrible pains happening, these unusual things happening with your body. You're naturally frightened. You're naturally debilitated because you can't work and you can't understand what's going on.
And you think you're going crazy. It's insane. Like, it's so insane. You actually think you're crazy. Like you're seeing, people just going about their merry day, and you're like, how are they functioning? Like, I can't get off the couch. Yeah. And I'm sure there's so many women, hopefully, that watch this that can be like, oh my gosh, like this is exactly how I feel. it is the weirdest thing. And it is really hard to describe to people how tired, how painful things can get. And just the emotional, the physical, all the stresses is just, it's insane. It is, it's a challenge.
Yeah. And really for this, I mean, the purpose of this podcast is to shift views, and that's why we called it Shifting Views. So we kind of want to change people's opinions, or at least get them to open their minds to new options. And of course, endometriosis is not particularly well known. I think it is becoming more well known because we're seeing more and more of it in the media. But as I said earlier on, I think the average person probably isn't. It's not on the tip of their tongue, so to speak. You know, so
absolutely,
so we kind of need to shift views on this and kind of get more people aware of it. But also, I think from the shifting views point of view, I think maybe changing the kind of stigma that might be associated with kind of generally women's health. Or even men's health. You know, men have issues too, and you know, typically they're not talking about these things because they're quite private things, and you know, it's quite a scary thing. So, how would you like to see views shift? What would you like to see happen to kind of push the campaign, if you like, and make more people aware of what's going on?
Well, firstly, I want to acknowledge and say thanks. Thanks for doing this. Like, from a male's point of view, this is huge. This is a topic that not many men talk about, you know, and the fact that you want to interview someone in regards to this is massive. And I'm trying to even think, like, with all the podcasts on endometriosis that I've watched, I don't think I've watched any that's had a male host. So well done to you, because you're shifting views, which is amazing. I think that's really important. My biggest thing, I think, for anyone, whether it's female or male, is there needs to be more education and there needs to be more empathy. I think if people can kind of provide the education to educate, it will help people understand, and in return, empathy is able to be shared to allow people to be aware of what they're going through. And I mean, you may not necessarily understand, but just providing empathy to what someone's struggling with. And this isn't just, I guess, endometriosis. Like, this could be across any condition, any disease. I think empathy is just such a big one, that it allows people to be like, okay, I'm being listened to, you know, like, they may not get it, but they understand. And I think those things, education and empathy, are like a huge, that if I can shout from the rooftop, like, we need more of that, and just throw it over the balconies, like, I would be so happy, because I think that's just so important for people like myself, and, you know, just the people that are really struggling and that just can't kind of find the voice to communicate what they're going through.
Yeah, and I'm interested to hear your perspective as well, as kind of what the male's role is in this as well, because you know, we all have wives, girlfriends, sisters, mothers, you know, whatever. You know, there's females in our family, and any one of them or any number of them could be dealing with this problem. And we were saying earlier, typically you're not talking about this stuff unless maybe if you're with a close loved one, you know, a husband or something. But outside of that, you're probably not talking about it much. But can males play a more significant role in helping their female loved one deal with this?
Absolutely. So my husband has learnt so much. My dad has learnt so much, and my brother has learnt a lot. And I think the important thing from a male perspective is ask questions. If you don't understand, if you know, you just kind of are like, why are they laying on the couch? Why have they not got up all day? You know, like, there's jobs that need to be done. Ask questions, because if you can ask the question, it can help that person communicate and say, hey, look, I'm fatigued. I am struggling. I can't get up and do those dishes that have been sitting there for the last 3 hours because I just need to lay on the couch. I think, if guys can just be that wraparound support for their loved ones, I think it would just really help, you know, those struggling to just feel a bit of just that safety net, that support and guidance around them, to be like, hey, I've got someone in my court. I've got someone that can fight my battle for me when I can't verbalize that I'm struggling. You know, that they know the signs. They can see what a fatigued face looks like. You know, there's been times I've been at the gym and I've been working out, and then, you know, my husband Rob's looked at me and he's like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Like, you've gone completely white. You
Yeah.
don't look good at all. And it's not until I sit back and tune in and I'm like, oh yeah, I actually don't feel well,
Yeah.
whether it's the fatigue or the pain or whatever it is.
Yeah.
um just him knowing, what looks normal, what doesn't look normal, just helping identify those things can
Yeah.
just make things go so much further, that just help you feel love, support, and that you've just got that bear hug around you.
Yeah. And I think that's wonderful. And I suppose that all comes down to communication. Ultimately, we need to be talking about these things more, don't we?
Absolutely.
And certainly endometriosis, because that's the topic today, but any kind of condition that's causing suffering, pain, and even if it may seem embarrassing, or, essentially we're all human beings. We all have the same things going on, and the human body is a very weird thing, and each to their own, So we have to talk, don't we? We have to have these discussions and say, look, something doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel normal. Something is definitely happening, and I think I need some help with it. And then if you've got a loving partner or your parents or whoever it might be, hopefully they're open enough to say, okay, well, let's figure it out together. Let's explore what's going on.
Absolutely. And I think what's really interesting is the people that kind of cringe at male gynecologists. So all of my doctors, all of my specialists, I've had a lot. And, in different fields, I've had a urologist as part of my journey. I've had a bowel surgeon as part of my journey. I've had 2 gynecologists. They're all male. I can't vision going to any female doctors because I've always been under male care. And I think for me, I find that interesting, because dealing with these males about a female body, you know, but these guys are experts. They know what they're doing. And I think it's so important. And like I'm always like backing up the male gynecologists, because I've worked with them, and they're just so empathetic when it comes to pain, and I think that's super important. You know, and I just hate hearing people cringe. Oh, I can never go and see like a male doctor. I'm like, why not? Like, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. Yeah, no, you're right, and it's so no, it's fine. You've just kind of got me on a chain of thought here, but it applies in all different kind of areas as well. I've certainly been to the doctor a few times in my life, and where they're kind of having to look at private parts of my body. Yeah, and actually, it's always I think it probably always has been a female. Now you've raised it.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
and I do recall thinking, this could be awkward, but then actually you're like, well. It's just a body, and you have to remember that and remove kind of the connection of all the other stuff that's connected with that part of your body, and actually just remember it's just another functioning organ, or it's another functioning piece of skin or whatever.
It's like a mechanic. They just look at the car engine and they're doing their thing, and I'm sure the dentist is doing the exact same thing.
Exactly. And people just can't be embarrassed about this stuff, and it's so important they're not, because people probably are suffering because they're not willing to have that conversation, not just with a doctor or nurse or whatever, but even with the people that they're closest to, so they'll suffer in silence, they'll suffer in pain, they'll accept that, I'm just going to have to deal with it and live with it, it'll pass, all of this sort of stuff. But what I wanted to ask you about was, if you don't deal with this problem, can we, you could be leading to some significant problems, maybe around with fertility and things like that?
Yeah, for sure. So unfortunately for me, with my journey, I did have to have a hysterectomy. And obviously we don't have children, so kind of missed out on that window of being able to have kids. And my gynecologist did say, like, my situation was so severe. If I had tried to conceive, I probably may have had to gone down the road of IVF. And if anyone that has done that journey, I haven't, but I've read a lot about it. I've so many friends that have done IVF. It is so taxing and tolling and emotionally draining that physically, emotionally, I don't think I would have coped. My journey was hard enough as it was, having to throw that in the mix. I don't know how these people do it. They go through the heartbreak, the ups and downs, the losses. It's insane. And unfortunately my situation was super severe. So it's like, kind of, if I'd got diagnosed earlier, would it have been caught earlier? Would it have caused so much damage to my body? I did end up with a leak with my ureter. So I had urine leaking through my pelvis, with like endometriosis damaging my ureter. And unfortunately, that caused sepsis. So that was like a massive thing. And that was, a couple of weeks after a surgery as well. So not only am I trying to recover from a surgery, I'm recovering from sepsis. That stopped me working for like 5 months because I was so ill. And so for some people, they lose organs. Some people can lose a kidney from it. I've had to have a 10-centimeter bowel resection because it had gone through my bowel. It can be super severe. And just with endometriosis alone, like it fuses organs together. It causes adhesions, and it's like, I guess, like spiderweb stuff. It sticks and glues everything down. And the pain, when your body's stuck and it's not in its natural position, the pain is just so severe where you're trying to move and walk and just do your daily activities, but your organs are going in the other direction that, they shouldn't be.
Sure.
It just causes so much severe pain, and a lot of damage. And the infertility thing is massive.
Yeah, so I mean, it can have huge impacts, and obviously, and you was alluding to it there, that with that comes a massive emotional toll, within not just you, but within your family and with your husband, and lots of people will be experiencing and will recognize this stuff that you're saying, which is why it's so important that we're having this conversation, because there will be people that are living with this now, and they're trying to explain to others, just like you're trying to explain to me, and you say, listen, I don't know how else to explain it. Not only is this the physically horrible pain that you can't even believe, and there's all this fatigue and all this stuff that comes with it, but emotionally and mentally, it's also this exhausting, monster on your back kind of thing, which links nicely really into what you do now. And I think this is so wonderful because the fact that you've been through this process and are going through this process, and now you're working hard to try and help women deal with this, other people that are in the same situation. And I suppose the challenge for you is either to try and help them discover the problem in the first place, or help them recognize symptoms and kind of advise them and guide them as to where, is it likely to be this? But also, if they have been diagnosed, how they live with this day to day. And that's what you're about now, is it?
Absolutely. And it's also a place for people to share their story as well, because I think, like in the situation of being diagnosed and having all these symptoms and, just not sure how to communicate it to your friend who doesn't have it and doesn't, have the challenges that you have. I think being that listening ear for people is really important. So, the platform is that they can share their story, they can feel related, they can feel listened to, and also they're getting support from someone that completely understands. After my hysterectomy, I had counseling, and it was good. It wasn't great, but I just felt I was in a position where all my friends were having babies. There were babies announcements, there was gender reveals, there was baby showers happening all at the same time that I've just had a hysterectomy. And I'm like, oh my God, like, how do I deal with this? This is emotional. Like this is a lot to handle. So having that someone else that can relate, I think is really important. And also, just learning ways to approach doctors, how to find the right questions to ask, I think is super important. If this service was available when I needed it, I totally would have utilized. And that's why I wanted to start something to be available for the people that are struggling, that need to be heard, that need support. I'm not claiming to be a medical professional, and I'm not giving medical advice. But I just want to be that person that can just prep them and help them on their journey and get the results that they need.
Yeah, and I think it's so wonderful because I'm an advocate of support groups. I think there's something really nice about being able to speak to someone who can say, okay, I recognize what you're saying because I've been through it. And, it's kind of like, the first time somebody gives birth or something, if you're in the same room as somebody else who's done it 3 times, hearing from them, okay, that's perfectly normal. yeah, that'll happen. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Whatever. And and
We'll
that's
expect that. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And that's a little different from what you would hear from, say, a doctor or a nurse who kind of gives you the advice also, but they're giving you this very clinical advice and look, this is what's happening, and that's obviously very important. But in the day-to-day living with stuff, it's almost like a reassurance, and I think, again, this could be for any condition, not just for this, and also for men and women, to be able to say to your friend, this thing is happening. Does this sound right to you? And them to say, oh, that happened to me. I can tell you. That's
absolutely.
a very different thing.
And I think, like for people who are navigating surgery and have never had surgery before, I didn't. When I first got diagnosed, that was my very first surgery. And waking up, and having the doctor standing there at your feet saying, you've been in theater for like 4.5 hours.
Gosh.
What should have been like an hour procedure, like you've stumped us. Like, this was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And to wake up and then be told that news, they talk about the flight or fight situation, with anxiety. That was a freeze situation for me. Like, I wasn't fighting, I wasn't flighting, I was freezing. I was just stumped to be like, I've got all this information. What does it mean? What do I do with it? And I remember laying in bed that night in hospital, COVID, Rob could come visit very briefly. My family couldn't come.
Yeah.
So I'm video chatting, like I've got it. I've officially got it. I thought I was going crazy, but I have it. What does it mean now? Like, I'm a statistic. And I think that was the hardest thing, was coming home, and there was a news article about endometriosis. I think at the time, like, the government was making it more needs to be talked about, more support needs to be given to these women. And I'm sitting there listening to it, and I'm like, what do I do? Like, am I meant to do something? I don't understand. And so, I just think having that support network to speak to these people that can relate and understand is huge. And to help anyone in that journey and in that position, I think it's just really important to have that support.
Yeah, no, I think it's wonderful. I agree. It's highly important, and it happens in lots of other arenas. There's like new mum groups and cancer support groups, and
the little coffee groups, all of those things.
These things exist, and I think it's just being able to have that open forum. But okay, Jane, listen, this has been so interesting, and I just want to thank you for coming on and being so open about your own journey as well, because it is a personal journey, but the fact that you're trying to help so many other people, essentially create something good out of something bad, if you like, is wonderful.
I have heard that a lot, kind of coming through it on the other end. I don't know if I'm through the other end, like I still have symptoms. I'm still got daily challenges and, things that I'm battling with, but I've learned a lot. And the things that I've learned, I just hope I can pass that on to someone else so that they can navigate the journey, with information, and just live a better life, I guess, at the end of the day, and just not feel that they have to be suffering in silence or by themselves.
Yeah. No, it's really wonderful. Jane, so where can people reach out to you? Because I really want to advocate for people to make contact with you. Presumably you're open to hearing from people and their experiences and trying to help them however you can.
Yeah, for sure. So you can go to my website. I'm Jane Franks Endo. So janefranksendo.com. You can find me on Instagram. My handle is your_endo_mentor. Or you can search Jane Franks Endometriosis Mentor on Facebook. And reach out, feel free, send me a message. If you want to book in for a consult, I'm able to, thanks to technology and Zoom, I'm able to do one-on-one consults, and you can pay in your local currency. You can pay via credit card. So because we're in different countries, that's not a barrier.
Yeah.
It's just our time zone's a barrier, but we'll figure it out. We'll work it out. And I can have this consult with you and just try and help navigate your journey, or just flick me a message. If you're not sure how I can help you, send me a message and we can start talking.
Yeah, but fundamentally, don't suffer in silence. If you feel like you're dealing with these problems, you've got to reach out. You've got to ask for help, because
100%.
It doesn't get better by doing nothing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Jane Franks, this has been so wonderful. Thanks very much for being on the show. Jane Franks, Endometriosis Mentor. Got the word right.
Well done. Well done. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Thanks.